Good morning and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, for this U.S. Men's National Team Conference call with head coach Gregg Berhalter. Earlier this morning, Gregg announced the 26 players who will join training camp ahead of USA Bosnia. That match December 18th at Dignity Health Sports Park in Carson, California. Kickoff 5:15 p.m. Pacific time, live on FS1, Une Mas, and Today NA. If you'd like to get in the queue to ask Gregg a question, you may do so now, and we'll begin with opening comments with Gregg.
Thank you, Michael. Before we start talking about the upcoming camp, I just want to acknowledge Nico Estevez and talk about how proud we are of Nico for getting the FC Dallas job. We think it's a great next step in his career. And just to give you a little background on Nico, my time between jobs after I got let go by Hammarby, I spent some time traveling around Europe. And I was able to go to Valencia and watch their first team train. But then I also saw the reserve team train, and I was watching this coach working and was really impressed with the organization of his training sessions, how he was motivating the players. And I got to talking to him after, and he was really open and shared everything that they were doing. I talked to the high performance director there. And we stayed in touch ever since then. That gentleman was Nico. And, when he was done working with Valencia, he gave me a call. And, he came over to the States as director of methodology with the Columbus crew with basically a 1-year contract and basically gambled on himself. And through the quality of his work, he was able to get promoted to assistant coach and then come to the national team and do outstanding work there. But I think it's really about just the opportunity that the soccer world can give people. And I think the trust that you have, if you're working with good people, good things will happen. And really proud of Nico and his dedication and supporting him all the way, and hope he's going to do a great job at FC Dallas. So that was Nico. We're sorely going to miss him. And, that's part of the game. The national team is always, people are always looking for the national team for talent, and we accept that, and we're more than happy for Nico. Looking forward to this camp. It's really simple. It's an opportunity for us to finish a year on a strong note. It's been a good year so far, but it's not done. We have another game in December. And the second thing, or the second and third thing, is we get to evaluate some new faces, guys we haven't seen before that we're really interested in working with. And then finally, keep the guys, the core players of this domestic group moving. The time we play again January 27th, and it's essential that when we hit the field on January 27th, we have guys that are ready to compete at a World Cup qualifying level. So this camp is essential that to have. And, we understand that guys have been playing all year and they're fatigued, and that's why the program will be slightly different, but we got to keep them moving and looking forward to competing against Bosnia on December 18th.
Thanks, Gregg. We will start with questions and begin with Sam Stasko from The Athletic.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gregg. Hope you're doing well. I'm sure you're prepared for these, but wanted to ask about a couple of guys who aren't on the team. In particular, Daryl Dike and Georgi Mihalovic. I know Mihalovic is training with Bologna, or is scheduled to train with Bologna at some point this winter. Dike has been very busy for the last couple of years, but why the decision not to call those guys in?
It was a conversation with both of those players, Sam. Spoke to Daryl. Exactly what you said. He's had a long year. He's beat up. He needs recovery. And, the most important thing at this time for Daryl is to get rest and recovery that he can focus on coming back in January and building himself up again. So that one was pretty straightforward. With Georgie, very similar situation. I had a conversation with Georgie talking about, what we're focused on in this camp. The objective is to keep guys moving, look at some new faces. Georgie's going to be moving because he's going to be training with Bologna in starting today. He left today to go there, or is leaving today to go there. So he's checking that box. We're familiar with Georgie. We said, go to Bologna, get that experience, and we'll see you potentially in January for our training camp then.
Next will be Brian Strauss from Sports Illustrated.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Gregg. Happy belated Thanksgiving. A lot of the storylines around the first couple windows of qualifying were about getting guys experience and getting them to sort of really understand and embrace what qualifying was about. You talked about that a great deal. To what extent are you willing to add maybe a bit of complexity to the next couple of windows if a guy does really well in this camp and looks like he might be able to compete? You're then faced with maybe sort of making that introduction to qualifying to new faces while you're sort of hitting the climax of the competition with the rest of the group. Are you willing to sort of set yourself up for that level of work where a bunch of other guys have already gotten that experience and that education?
I would love to have that problem, Brian. It would be great if a guy came into camp and just blew us away and has made a case to be a starter in World Cup qualifying. Anything can happen. I'm not ruling anything out. We have some good, young, talented players. We also know that this January window is going to be crucial. It's going to be an important window. Again, the objective is to look at new faces. What comes from that will come, and then keep guys moving. And we're open to any possible scenario that happens.
Next will be Ron Blum from the Associated Press.
Hi, Greg. Thanks for doing this. Could you go through your thought process on picking Columbus and Minneapolis? And why isn't there a worry that extremely cold or snowy weather might equalize any talent ability you have?
Yeah, I'm glad we're having this conversation. It's hard to really communicate in full what we're trying to accomplish in these windows, with a press release. So it's nice to be able to talk about it now. So essentially, we're looking at this we were waiting to see where Canada was going to play. That's the first thing. There was potential. We heard they may play in Vancouver indoor. So we had to be ready to react. We were ready to react. We had 2 venues on the West Coast that would have fit nicely. Some of the criteria we're looking for is minimizing travel and pro-US crowd. So now you start thinking about stadiums that you can minimize travel and have a pro-US crowd. You guys know El Salvador. It's tough. Who are the guys from DC, around on this call? El Salvador, DC is really tough. You can't play there, right? It will be a home game for El Salvador if you do that. Honduras, very similar. Eastern Seaboard, New York, similar for Honduras and El Salvador. As you get towards warmer weather, potentially in Florida, you're still running that risk of the crowd. We want a pro-US crowd. You guys have seen what a pro-US crowd does for the boys, does for the atmosphere. So now we start having to weigh the risk of that, of the weather, extreme weather. We know a large portion of our guys are playing in Europe. They're playing in cold weather right now. They're coming back to cold weather. They should be able to adapt pretty nicely. We know the field in Columbus is going to be good. Some other venues weren't able to get the field up to standards to play in the winter, so we had to exclude them. And Minnesota and Columbus popped out from a travel field standpoint and weather. Just think about, if it's tough for us and we have guys playing in Europe in cold weather, what's it going to be like for Honduras? Who's coming from Honduras midweek, coming from 85, 90 degree temperatures to go to Minnesota. What's it going to be like for them? So we see that as an advantage for us, honestly. And, the qualifying is about winning games and about qualifying. So, we think this is going to give us a good opportunity to do that. Sorry for the long-winded answer. Hope that helped.
We'll move on to Doug McIntyre from Fox.
Thanks, Michael. Hi, Greg. 2 questions for me, if I may. You opened the call talking about Nico McElhenney reported that Luchi Gonzalez might be joining your staff. Any word on that? And a larger question, looking at January, this camp and this game designed to keep guys moving, as you said. How confident are you that it's going to be enough? For the MLS guys, the starters, guys like Walker's and Miles Robinson, to be able to contribute in January. Thank you.
Well, that's the good thing about it. We're going to be able to see if it's enough, right? Because we'll be with them. And then we'll be with them in January, starting January 8th. We have another training camp. And we'll be able to see right up until that window opens, where guys are at fitness wise. We expect the core guys to play 90 minutes in this game. Miles was an exception. I'm surprised I wasn't asked why he wasn't on the roster, but he was an exception that because of the wear and tear he's had this season, we wanted to get him rest and recovery. We gave him a program to do individually. And we'll see him in the beginning of January in that camp. But we'll be able to see firsthand where the guys are at. But first and foremost, it's going to be important to have fit guys on the field in January.
Next will be Jeff Carlisle from ESPN.
Thanks, Michael. Hey, Greg. I was wondering if you could dig into the two guys who played in the USL last year, Jonathan Gomez and Kobe Henry. Obviously Gomez has played for both Mexico and U.S. youth national teams, but what was your thought process in bringing in both of those guys at this stage in their career?
So that Kobe was with our U20 team in that tournament. We got some good feedback from him, from the coach, from Mikey. There was another player, Jalen, that we were looking at as well from the U20s. It's important for us to start integrating some of these younger players in, especially in a camp like this where we can afford to do that. So we were earmarking a number of U20 players to bring into this camp. Paxton Aronson was one of them. Caden Clark was one of them. Brian Gutierrez was one. You saw Gaga is coming in as a goalkeeper. So it's important to start bringing these guys up to the senior team and giving them that experience. With Jonathan, he's also U20 eligible. He wasn't at that camp, but Jonathan's a guy who's going to be going overseas in January. It's important for us to get a good look at him. Left back has always been an issue of depth for us, and we think he's a talented player, and we think he could be ready to make an impact now. So it will be great to see him and great to get to work with him.
Next will be Charlie Bone from MLSsoccer.com.
Hey, thanks for your time. Just a couple follow-ups on what others have asked. I'm going to bug you to see if you could, if you're able to speak on what Doug asked about Luchi Gonzalez's status. And then also, are you prepared for a follow-up on Ron's question? Minnesota could easily get into sub-zero temperatures, and I would think at some point that starts to have an effect on the style of play that you want. Are you prepared for the kind of worst-case scenario there?
Yeah. So Charles, in terms of effect on style of play, what are you thinking there?
I mean, there's the pitch itself, there's the equalization of talent, there's the difficulty of being fluid, progressive, keeping the ball moving the way I think you would probably like.
Yeah. So what we're being told is that the field is not going to be an issue. The field is going to be soft. It's going to be smooth. And that was the first question we were asking, which is important. There could be a case where we get severe snow during the game, which could affect it for sure. And that's, we're looking at average snowfall in the month of January. There's no exact science for this. And, we did our best possible work to make a good decision on where we should play. In terms of the cold, we'll be fine. We'll be able to deal with the cold weather. It is what it is. Even if it gets to temperatures like that, we'll be able to perform. The field was a concern, but again, we think that it should be all right. Regarding Luchi, paperwork is being finalized. That's why we weren't able to give an announcement today. We would have liked to do that, but he will be joining us as an assistant coach pending paperwork. And whatever that means, maybe there's a last minute snag. So you never know what happens, but we expect him to be joining the staff as an assistant coach.
And we'll keep everybody updated on when we're able to make that official. Next would be Ivan Skolarcev from SBI Soccer.
Greg, I noticed there's obviously some foreign-based players in here, and it's not always easy outside the windows to get guys in. Has that process gotten a little easier? I mean, you have Brian Reynolds, you have Taylor Booth, you have Johnny Cardozo, and unrelated question as far as dual nationals go, you have Gaga Slonina, who's kind of said he hasn't decided yet national team-wise. You have Jonathan Gomez, who Mexico is on the trail of. How much did that factor into kind of wanting to get them in and getting them a taste of your setup and trying to get ahead in what is probably going to be a race for their status?
Yeah, good question. We have other dual nationals as well. Let me just get you the name here if I can tell you. So we have Gaga, who's one. Johnny Cardosa obviously is one. Kevin Paredes is one. Kobe is one. Jonathan Gomez is one. So there's a number of dual nationals that we have in this camp, and that's part of it, right? We talked about that. I think we explored that conversation last window, and for us, it's showing them the environment, getting them in this environment. A lot of these guys have been part of our youth programs as well, and we want to bring them through the ranks. We think it's important to integrate young players, and I think that's the bigger emphasis is how do we tie in vertically integrate some of our youth players into the senior team when it's appropriate. If it was a qualifying window, it would be very difficult, but now it is pretty easy to do that. And we want to take advantage of that. What was the other question you have, Ives?
As far as dealing with the foreign clubs who don't have to release these guys.
Yeah, it's still tricky. It was a back and forth with Internacional from Brazil. We still don't know when Johnny's coming into camp. The exact date. They have a game on the 6th. He could potentially come after that, or maybe he'll have to wait till the game after the game on the 9th. So that was a give and take there. With Roma, it's clear that Brian's not playing a big role with them. And they want him to hang around for that conference game on the 9th, which is unfortunate because we'd like to have him in camp. But if he has an opportunity to play, that would be great. And then the other one with Tyler, is a young player playing in the second team, and I think it helps everyone for him to get a taste of the national team.
Next will be Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now.
Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Greg. Just two quick questions. Is it possible that other players could be added based on the return, the conference finals, and also Jordan Morris has only recently come back after missing most of the season. Discuss where you think he's at right now in his stage of his recovery and how close he is to being able to be ready for, World Cup qualifying action when the standards for call-ups are even tougher.
Yeah, and if we don't bring him into this camp, he has no chance of playing qualifiers, right? So our job now is to work with him these next 4 weeks when we're in camp to get him ready to see if he can make an impact on World Cup qualifiers. We know his talent level. We know what he brings to the team. He gives us a different dimension, and it'd be nice to get him in a place where he can perform in these games, but we just don't know yet. So we'll have to wait and see when he's in camp. He's made a lot of progress with Seattle. They did a great job of getting him back on the field. And now the next step is getting him into form and at a top level. Regarding the other players that you asked about, who was that? Sorry.
No, I just said, could other players be added theoretically during camp?
Yeah, the thinking about the guys playing in the conference final is, it's a week later, so they still were active for a week. There's going to be a lot of emotional toll for any of those players that don't make it to the final. And we just said, we'll leave it. We'll leave it there. We'll give them some stuff to do at home and mentally let them cool down a little.
Next will be Doug Roberson from the Atlanta Journal-Constitution.
Thank you. Coach, if you could talk about what did you like from Brooks Lennon this season that caused you to call him up? And what do you want to see from Bello, who's played well for the most part for the U.S. Going into this camp as one of the experienced defenders, I guess, now?
So for both of those players, it's going to be about, being aggressive going forward, being really clinical in the penalty box, good decision-making in around the penalty box. And with Brooks, I think he showed that relentlessness of attacking and defending up and down the line, really, really good fitness. And he's a player that for some reason or another, we haven't been able to get in camp. There was issues with Atlanta releasing players in January camp, so he couldn't come before. And so we're thankful that they released him now so we can get a good look at him. With Georgie, it's just about continuing to develop. He has some really high parts of his game. He also has some inconsistencies that we want to continue to work with him. The left back spot is Anthony's done a great job, and after that it's pretty open. So, hoping that these guys will try to make a big impact with us this camp.
Last question comes from Patrick Murphy.
Hey, Greg. I'm curious if you could explain Giassi, obviously the oldest, most experienced guy in the camp, obviously a guy you know well. What do you hope he brings to a group of less experienced, mostly younger guys?
With Giassi, it's pretty simple. You know, he's been out for a while, and we're using this camp to get him back up to speed, to put him in position to help the team in January window. You know, there's not high expectations for him playing in the Bosnia game, but we want to bring him along in a safe way. You know, he's a guy that has been out, but it's important to get him integrated with the team, get him back with the group. You know, he's a guy, to be specific about what he brings to the team. He's a guy that he'll be the oldest player on the team, and he'll be the hardest worker. And all the young guys can look up at him and see, oh, man, this is a guy who's been around forever and he's still working like that. He sets a great example. So we're hoping that we can get Giassi, up to fitness, that he'll be ready in January to really make an impact.